So we're starting our series on building this small garden shed, and this is the first video of that series. So what I'm going to explain now is how we go about laying out the floor system. So in this case, I'm using pressure treated lumber, and it was a 2x8 that I ripped down the middle, and that left me with the equivalent of about a 2x4, and that's going to be on its edge. The two boards that I have here are both 8 feet long, and they will be two of the rim joists that all the other joists get attached to. And what I need to do is I need to lay out where those other joists get nailed so that they're accurately placed, so that we can put the sheathing on, or the plywood, or as you would know it, so it can be attached, and the joints of that plywood will land on a joist. So that will become more obvious when I get started. So I'm going to lay out both of these at the same time. I want to make sure that both ends are flush, and I'm going to take my tape measure and hook it on the end. And the first joist, I'm going to put a mark at 15 1/4, because I want that first joist to be 16 inches from the end. Now remember, the material that we're using is 1.5 inches wide, so I want the center of that joist to be at 16 inches. So I am going to calculate half the distance of that joist and subtract it from my measurement so that it moves the edge of the joist back by half the distance. So the next one, I will mark that at 31 3/4, and I'm going to put an X on the side of the line where I want to attach my stud, or joist in this case. And I'm going to do that for the entire length, putting a joist every 16 inches. And then there'll be another one on the end. I don't need to mark that, I just have to put it flush. So I will now take my square and just draw those lines accurately across the two joists. Now I'm going to move the camera here in a second, just to give you an idea as to what I've done. So I'm hooked on the end, and I come up, my first joist is marked at 15 1/4, and that puts the center of that joist at 16 inches. And I'll do the same thing at 32 and 48 and so on. So as you can see, I've got my floor more or less laid out. I've put all of the wood with the factory edge down. So this is the edge that's got the chemical on it. But typically what we would do if we were framing a floor is we would look down the length of the joist in this case, and we would see if it's got a crown or if it's got a dip in it, and we would always put the crown up. Okay, so if this board had a hump in it, I would put the hump side up. That way any weight on the joist would help to flatten it down. If I turned it over the other way and the crown was down, well then any weight that we put on it or gravity would just cause the crown to be more accentuated in the wrong direction. So that's what we would normally do. In this case, because I've got the chemical that I'm trying to take advantage of, being pressure treated lumber, I want to put that side down just so that if it comes in contact with dirt or anything like that when it's being used, it won't rot. So I'm going to use 3.5-inch Ardox nails, and we talked about those in our PowerPoint presentation. And these are a very popular framing fastener. It's the one that everybody uses unless you're using something like a power nailer, and in that case I think the length is typically 3 1/4 inches long. So whenever you're framing something like this, if you're in the position where you have an opportunity to do some framing, typically you will stand on your work, okay, and you bend down and just drive those nails in. So we're going to try to line things up the best we can. So since I last nailed things together, I've done a few things. First of all, I've checked the diagonals. So I've measured from corner to corner to make sure that both of those are identical. And then I've taken a piece of this webbing and I've screwed it along the one direction, and it wants to open up on that direction. So I've screwed up, or I've attached a piece of webbing that will hold it so that it won't spring apart. The next thing that I did was I took a chalk line and I measured 48 inches from the edge of the floor system to this point, and did the same thing on that end, and then I used a chalk line to give myself a straight line, and that gives me a reference point so that I know where my plywood should go. The plywood that I'm using is a tongue and groove plywood. Maybe you can see it that way. So this piece of plywood at this edge is got the tongue, and then there's a groove on that other piece that's lying underneath the garage door there. And the nails that we're using to attach the plywood to the floor is a 2-inch galvanized Ardox nail. This plywood has been out in the weather for a long time, so it's sprung all over the place. It means that it's not laying flat. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get that to fit together. Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'll stop filming. So I've got the tongue put together. It was a bit of a challenge. Now I'm just finishing nailing it off. In this area here, some of the plywood was damaged, so I took some of that Titebond 3 glue and I tried to glue it together, and I'm just using the weight of these two batteries with a piece of plastic and a piece of plywood to kind of squish the joint back together while the glue sets. So I just have to finish nailing it off. I believe the nailing sequence for this situation should be one nail every 8 inches. So this is 24 inches, so I put a nail at each end, one about 1/3 of the way in, and another one at about 2/3 of the way. I didn't feel like it hit anything.